your call for the incoming Trump administration to launch a federal civil rights probe into the Manhattan DA. So tell us about that.
Well, it's really simple. I mean, the Manhattan DA has made this racial. We have seen what AG Bragg has been capable and has tried to pursue. And I think between Trump and now this is the icing on the cake with Penny, convicted at any cost. They make it a vendetta. He is definitely political. This is politicized. And I think he needs to be investigated. I think the whole DA's office in Manhattan needs to be investigated.
You have someone on the New York City Council calling for the new Trump DOJ's Civil Rights Division to launch an investigation into what's going on in the Manhattan DA's office with Alvin Bragg. Is there enough focus on actual crime, or is this an office that has been, what it appears to be, weaponized for political purposes, whether it's cases against Donald Trump or cases against Daniel Penny? Quickly, Will, just an update for people. We were looking it up. The cases against Donald Trump, there's big decisions to be made there.
That's right. So as a reminder for everyone, that was the 34 felony counts that DA Bragg conjured up out of saying it was a state law attached to something. Basically, they could charge you in the state for a violation of a campaign finance law if that crime happened. There was never a charge federally, but he still went forward with this novel idea that he could charge President Trump for committing a crime which he'd never been charged, much less had the justice system look at. But that was that case, and it went forward, and there was a conviction. And with the transition that is coming up, the election, there was question about whether or not that would stand. The Judge Merchan, that's the case most people know this as, is Judge Merchan's case, had recently postponed sentencing. He adjourned the sentencing hearing, which was supposed to be on November 26th, and did not relist it on the docket anywhere. So it is, at this point, postponed indefinitely. But also, he gave the defense, so Trump's attorneys, until December 2nd to file a motion to dismiss. And the prosecution had until yesterday. So Alvin Bragg had to file their opposition to the motion to dismiss yesterday before Judge Merchan. So we could hear what the judge is deciding to do when he takes into account all the immunity issues, the transition team issues, and now this motion to dismiss any day at this point as he deliberates from these briefs from both the defense and the prosecution. Another DA Bragg overstep. But we'll see how the judge comes out with this.
Yeah, I mean, and you look at the Attorney General in New York. She says she's not going to stop fighting against President Trump, though she's not going to drop the case. But right now, the case is before the appellate court system there, and that court is leaning towards and been looking at. Some are predicting, hard to predict courts, of dismissing that entire case as well, the civil cases that the Attorney General attempted to bring and brought against President Trump. I want to bring in Harry Hutchinson right now because, Harry, the bigger, I guess, discussion point, and it will have to be done in a way that I think is fair. It's got to be a way that's transparent enough for a Department of Justice investigation if you were to launch a Civil Rights Department investigation, so a federal probe into a state DA's, a city DA's office. Here would be Alvin Bragg's, But this idea that if we've seen a weaponized legal system that may have started at the federal level, but is certainly what it's done is it's inflicted in all of the different political levels. So anybody who seems to be elected, if they have any law enforcement job on the left, they've let their politics start guiding them. And whether it's issues of race or purely just Democrat, Republican politics, when we see Daniel Penny's case, when we see the Trump case, is this idea that we'll keep fighting against him while he's, about to become president of the United States. I think it could warrant an investigation, and it is the way to root out weaponization. It's not saying we're going to try to put all these people in jail. That's not what an investigation would do. What it would look at is whether or not they are properly conducting the decision-making of when to bring charges and against who.
I think you're precisely correct. And so the fundamental issue from a justice perspective is whether or not every American is entitled to due process of law without bias, without a focus either on race or politics. And so if you look at the history of the FBI, for instance, in terms of them going after Donald Trump, this reaches back to 2015, 2016, with Lisa Page, with Peter Strzok, with individuals within the FBI department who essentially have lied in order to gain a FISA warrant against Donald Trump. This process has continued with respect to the invasion of President Trump's residence in Florida. It also involves, for instance, the FBI going after pro-life Catholics in Richmond, Virginia, in Los Angeles, and in Portland, Oregon. And it now likely includes Alvin Bragg, who is the Manhattan District Attorney, who has brought racially inflammatory charges against Daniel Penny in a case that should never have been brought. So there is a clear and substantial basis for investigating the Manhattan District Attorney and for rooting out corruption within the Manhattan District Attorney's office and possibly bringing charges for a violation of President Trump's civil rights. Keep in mind, in the Manhattan case brought by Alvin Bragg against Donald Trump, it was grounded in a suspicious, surreptitious, if you will, campaign finance violation, which was never proven. And so I think at the end of the day, I think Vicky Palladino, the New York City councilwoman, is right to at least raise this issue.
And Professor Hutchison, what many on the left, if something like this were to take place, if the DOJ Civil Rights Division were to start looking at places like the Manhattan District Attorney's Office, the people on the left would cry foul. They would say, this is the retribution we were talking about, weaponizing the DOJ, going after his political enemies. But that's precisely what the Civil Rights Division of the DOJ is for. They all the time, constantly, are looking at local police forces, local district attorneys' offices, and making sure that this entire web of state offices and state judiciaries are falling in line with what the Constitution and the federal law provides as protections for people's civil rights. So we should caution people that if they hear the left saying, look, we told you so, this is the job of the Civil Rights Division. If you look up Civil Rights Division, they're always coming to an agreement with police departments, with local DAs to not prosecute in a certain way or to change their policies here, because that's the role of the oversight of the federal government, to make sure that policing and the prosecutions on a state level are still protecting the federal constitutional rights of all Americans. So it doesn't end necessarily in a trial or a charging of someone. Most of the time, these things end in an agreement, a settlement of some sort with the federal government that they're not going to continue violating civil rights.
Absolutely. So I think the quintessential issue that's before us in this particular arena is the possibility of local corruption, local weaponization of the Justice Department, local politicization of the district attorney's office. And clearly, I think most Americans would agree that the Manhattan District Attorney, under Alvin Bragg's leadership, has launched a ton of highly politicized and weaponized cases which make little sense. So I think at the end of the day, the Civil Rights Division of the Justice Department, under the leadership, most likely of Pam Bondi, should consider investigating what the New York Manhattan District Attorney has done over the last several years.
Listen, what we know is that there's plenty of people inside the Department of Justice and plenty of divisions. I think Harmony Dillon's been nominated to head up the Civil Rights Division at the Department of Justice. She's was the California GOP chair, has a law firm that's has been involved in Republican politics and politics in general, and the law around election law and issues like that. So certainly, again, these are individuals that know part of their job is to go in there and get these agencies. I mean, this is the biggest lift for Pam Bondi. It's the biggest lift for each of these division chairs and deputies there is. Can we, in the amount of time we have, whether it's the entire 4 years that you serve and then a different president's coming in, we know that. So in those 4 years, can you clean up the reputation and the way Americans see the Department of Justice, the FBI? Can you clean it up and also get it back on track? Get it back on track by doing the right things, which is to focus on the bad guys, focus on the crime, focus on the gangs, focus on keeping Americans safe from terrorism and other issues, especially when you're involving the FBI, instead of becoming a political kind of back and forth issue. We don't want our legal system to look like that.